1, 2. 1, 2.
Hello, hello.
Should we start before you do all that? Yeah, okay.
We're going to start before Steve does a load of beatboxing. Hello everyone, welcome to the Bleep shop. My name is Derek Walmsley, I'm the editor of the Wire magazine. This is the first event in our little takeover of the shop, which is happening this week. Lots of events which we're doing. First off, we're going to do a little talk with some techno royalty, which is Steven Rutter of B12, and also FireScope Records, many other things. We're going to do a bit of a Q&A, live set around 7 o'clock, which is something to look forward to. Steve's bought all his gear, which is excellent. You can, Steve obviously had a really long association with Warp via B12 and other things, and you can check out a lot of his records at the back. Loads of his records for sale, along with lots of Wire merch, etc., etc. Hey Steve, how you doing?
Crapping myself.
You'll be fine. You're amongst friends. Thanks a million for coming down. It's excellent. So what am I going to ask you? So you're still making music today. You know, is the techno flame burning just as bright now as it ever was? And is it still all techno to you?
Hello, everyone. I've never spoke to people like this before, so it's quite interesting, really. The techno flame still burns. I'm 52 years old now, and can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, Lord.
They can hear you fine.
I'm 52 years old, and I started making music when I was about 18, 19, and it's still the same music to me. It's still techno, what I call techno, and it's still exactly the same. And some people know this, some people don't, so if I'm repeating myself, tell me to shut the fuck up. But I stopped buying music in about 1996, something like that. And so the music that I make today still comes from that same mindset I've always had. So I'm good friends with Kirk DeGiorgio. I don't know if any of you have heard of him before, but I say to him, you know, like, Kirk, how can I, you know, survive today making music when all I know is music from yesteryear? And he says it's a blessing. But so I think it is, so it's good. So yeah, it's exactly the same, and the techno flame burneth bright.
Good.
Oh, thank you.
Feel free to clap. Steve's a tiny bit nervous. I don't know why. Big up, Steve. Okay, so we're not going to be able to cover everything you've ever done because it's many, many years. But your partner in crime in B12, Mike Golden, you know, he said that he sort of grew up doing pirate radio stuff, playing soul, playing house, etc., etc. But you yourself, you didn't do that. You kind of you were sort of a bedroom producer, I take it. You know, if it's not too personal question, you know, what were you doing in your bedroom? How are you connecting? How are you connecting with the big wide world of music from in your bedroom?
So in my bedroom, I was doing the same thing that most of the chaps sitting in front of me were probably doing in the bedroom. I should think. I was a bedroom mixer, and I learnt to mix. Oh my goodness! When I was at college, I was quite young, and I bought 2 Technics turntables, and I used to do scratching and cutting and stuff, and you know, in the early hip hop days. I used to have a rapper as well, and I used to do backspins and cuts, and I can still do that. And I learnt to mix. I had a Fostex 4-track tape deck, and I used to make little mix sessions on there. And I knew Michael's sister actually, and she said to me, you know, her brother's a really good mixer, and I should get together with him. And I met him. And he wasn't a great mixer at all, and, and he'll happily admit that. And that's how we became friends. And I took him around. I had a bed sit in Walthamstow. I said, you know, come around and have a look. And I taught him how to mix. And he's like quite outgoing. I'm not really that outgoing. These days I'm more outgoing than I've ever been because I have to be. But back in the days I was quite shy, and as you could probably tell, I didn't really talk much. And so once we both were kind of mixing and doing stuff, we we did some little events, little acid parties and things, and Mike got into pirate
Up in
radio.
Walthamstow, out of curiosity.
Walthamstow, Hackney Road. We used to play at a place called the Old Axe. I used to play there twice a week. But the pirate radio I would never do, and the reason I would never do pirate radio is because of my voice. Funnily enough, I do talk a lot, so I'm probably going to have to shut me up every now and again.
Talk away.
But I used to phone up my mum at work when she used to work in the nursery in Hackney, and I used to phone up and say, can I speak to Gloria? That's my mum. And I used to hear him shout out, Gloria, your mum's on the phone. And so pirate radio, I would never do it because I couldn't do the talking. I was just far too nervous.
What were the first records which you heard? Which were the first records you heard where you thought electronic music is a thing?
Okay, so it was hip hop at the start. Obviously, before that, I used to listen to punk, ska, reggae, Studio One, that kind of thing. And then I heard Rocket, Herbie Hancock Rocket. I was at a house party, and I never used to dance. I used to just stand in the corner, like didn't know what to do with myself. And everyone's kind of dancing. I thought, this is good. This is really good. And I went out and I got, I think it was Electro 2. I think I missed Electro 1, and I thought this music was something special. And like before that, I said I used to listen to a lot of punk music. My favourite punk band's the Stranglers, and I still listen to the Stranglers, and there's like lots of hammered organ and synth and stuff in there. So
good bass lines.
Wicked bass lines, yeah. Stranglers are absolutely brilliant, and so it's kind of like a progression. So like when the early house started, and as music moved on from hip hop, we then ended up with electro, and then we had some acid house and some Chicago and all that. But when I heard the Frankie Bones Breaks records, that's when I thought, this is a thing. So I was DJing at the Old Axe in Hackney Road, and I was playing the Bones Breaks, and I could hear like these samples and loops. And I thought, what is this stuff? And I went and bought a Akai sampling keyboard. It was like a monster. It took up my whole ironing board in my bedsit, and that's how I started making music, making sort of Bones Breaks types things.
How did it sound when you were churning out your first tracks?
Do you know, the funny thing is, like, I've still got a couple of them, and they were a sort of hybrid of like breaks from like Eric B and Rakim and things like that, and LL Cool J playing at 45, and like the Johnson Crew electro tracks doing the beats. So they were kind of like hybrids of electro and hip hop. That was the first things I made, yeah.
Wasn't new romantic music as well big for you?
Yeah, so when I was at school, I used to go to school in Morpeth Comprehensive School. I don't know, it's just in Bethnal Green, and I used to think I was a bit of a rude boy, and so I used to listen to the Specials and Bad Manners and Madness and Two Tone and all that. And then the new romantic stuff came, Spandau Ballet, Ultravox, Visage. I loved it, yeah. But I didn't quite carry off the look. I used to have a shirt called, I do talk a lot, sorry. I used to have a shirt called a Dr. Kildare shirt. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them, but they used to have buttons that used to come like that. And I used to wear that for school. I looked like a bleeding dentist. Couldn't carry it off. But,
so was that your, as far as you got with the new romantic look, a shirt with lots of buttons, or did you rock a Flock of Seagulls haircut or anything like that?
No, I never did. But my second cousin he was a manager for a Flock of Seagulls, funnily enough. So it's funny you should bring them up.
Oh, okay.
And my brother-in-law, he used to have this haircut. Oh, fucking hell, Steve, I'm rambling. He used to have this haircut, and it used to be like a big quiff that used to fold round. I can't remember what they called it. Jamie, do you remember what they called it? It was like a big step.
Why me?
But I couldn't.
I had one.
I couldn't do it when I had hair, which I haven't got now. I used to have like long curly hair, and I couldn't have this kind of new romantic quiff. Just weren't working. Weren't happening.
So how did it pan out with Mike once you'd shown him how to mix and stuff like that? What happened with Mike after that?
So once I taught Mike to mix, and then we started doing these little raves together. And like I say, we did the Old Axe. We had one at Shackle Lane that we did, and we both kind of had this same realization. These loop tracks looked quite easy to make. and they were very easy to make. And
This would be like 88, 87.
I can't remember. I'm terrible with dates, but yeah, quite late 80s, early 90s. And actually, what happened was I went and bought some equipment. I borrowed some money from a friend and bought some equipment. And Mike teamed up with this guy. His name was Robin. His DJ name was Desert Rat. I don't know whatever happened to him. And they started writing music together, and I started writing music by myself. And then me and Mike met up again because we kind of were friends, and we sort of split up and we got back together. And when I say split up, he just went his own way, doing his own thing. You know, we were still friends. And when we got back together, and I said, "Look, Mike, this is what I'm doing," and I had to listen to what he was doing. And I said, why don't we just join forces? So that's exactly what we did. We built a studio in his mum and dad's house above the garage, and we used to have a filing cabinet which was turned on its back, so it was laying down, and we had 3 Akai S900 samplers like lined up. We used to call them the heaters. We used to turn them all on. I was fucking sweating there, That's where we started. So B12 started in a room above a garage in Eastern Avenue.
Where did you get the money for buying quite a few bits of gear?
So I borrowed some money from a friend of mine, and I was working as well. So Mike weren't working at the time, he was just doing music, and I was working. So I had a Barclay card, Visa card. Fucking hell, when I got my first Barclay card, Visa card, I went to Richard Sounds at London Bridge and bought 2 Technics turntables, 640 quid back then. I don't know what they cost now. And it was Mr. Barclays that paid for the equipment.
Good answer. Steve, you're quite an introspective guy. Is Mike the same, would you say?
No, Mike's complete opposite to me, really. I'm really shy. I'm so nervous. Honestly, you don't know how nervous I am. I'm quite a shy person, and like I say, Mike's quite forward, and he would quite happily stand it. He'd be talking to you like this, and I'm just not like that. I just want to go into a corner and hide and get Jamie to do it. But no, so we're completely opposite. And in the early 90s, like I say, I used to let Mike do all the talking. And if we had interviews, that kind of thing, I never used to speak because I used to think, whatever I've got to say is rubbish. You know this, or some of you might know this feeling, like imposter syndrome. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. So he's not like that at all. No, he's different to me.
It's a bit of a weird question, but was the imposter syndrome more acute because you were from the UK and you were not from Detroit, for instance?
No, I tell you what, I don't mind. Imposter syndrome comes from my childhood, being at school. I went to school in Bethnal Green, and I come from a really poor family, and I was always watching my back all the way through school, and I think that's probably where it comes from. And when we started writing music, in answer to your question, I never once felt what we were doing was less than. Never.
Yeah, I never suggested.
UK. I'm coming out of my shell now.
I'm also quite introspective, and I definitely was in those days. Do you think introspective people are especially drawn to electronic music?
That's a good question. I think maybe you may have something there. A lot of musicians that I know, a lot of music listeners, consumers, or whatever we want to call them, music lovers, the people that matter the most. Most people I come across are kind of like me, I find, yeah. Well, I'm quite good with people and talking to people, and I've been in therapy a lot, so I'm kind of good with that kind of thing, and I find I meet a lot of like-minded people, yeah.
This is always just my take, but maybe something about the sort of purity of electronic music. It's exactly as you make it. It's not, you're not got amps kind of doing weird things in the background. I always, something about the purity, but also you're in total control of it. I think sometimes that maybe helps introspective people in some ways.
I think you're right. Certainly from the music that I make, every note in my music comes from my heart and soul, everything, and yeah, it's just me pushing my feelings out there, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there are some really beautiful strings on B12 records. Was that yourself? Was it Mike? Was it a bit of both of you? Well, what turned you onto those, beautiful strings?
Well, I don't. B12 stuff that me and Mike wrote together, we never tell anyone who done what. It's like a closed shop. But basically, we both do exactly the same thing. So my solo stuff that I've been doing, the strings are there. You can hear the strings and the emotion. It's still there. So definitely that side's in me. I'm a much more. That's not fair to say that. Mike's quite happy to make like a banging tune, something up tempo and more danceable. I'm not. I'll always make something which is going to make you cry and something will move you. Definitely, yeah. I don't even know if I've answered you, but that's my answer.
Not really. Like, films maybe, or even like ambient music. Were you checking for any of that kind of stuff at those times? Like, or was the feel for strings you get on B12 just a question of you guys sitting in the studio doing it with your heart and soul?
Good, I'm glad you pushed me on this one. Science fiction films I've watched since I was a kid, and I love science fiction, and the same for Mike as well. We're both sci-fi buffs, and in the early B12 stuff, we were listening to. Excuse me. I thought I was going to hiccup. We were listening to soundtracks for Terminator, like the Terminator movies and Blade Runner and all those kind of things. The Terminator soundtracks were done by a guy called Brad Fiedel, and there are lots of strings on there. And I think like when you're starting making electronic music, I think that's an observation of mine, whether it's crap or not, I don't know. It can go two ways. When you first sit in front of a keyboard, you either do some really crappy two-note bass line, which is what everyone does, or you do as many fingers as you can on the keyboard. And that was my approach. So that's kind of probably how it started. Yeah.
That can lead to good results, though, doesn't it? Like you get two notes clashing a bit, and it's a bit discordant, and it's got a little bit of an eerie edge. I don't know. I get quite a lot of that from B12 type things,
Yeah, I think that I don't know anything about music theory, or I can't play any instrument. I don't know keys and chords. I have got no idea, and so everything just comes, like I said, comes from the heart. And I do sit there playing lots of keys, but I think I get it right mostly by luck. And I know I play things that are probably impossible to actually play.
I did an interview with Jeff Mills some years ago, and he talked about how he felt about different keys, and he said, well, the white keys, that's like the light, that's the optimism. The dark keys, that's the dark, that's the pessimism. Which sounds a bit like hokey, but I really like this because it really indicated how seriously he was thinking about his melodies. There was like a whole thing behind it, a whole code he'd sort of invented for it.
Black keys and white keys is really. Is anyone here write music? Is anyone makes music?
Must be more.
There must be someone. Everyone's quiet. Who makes music? Anyone? How easier is it to play the black notes than the white notes? You can play anything on the black keys and it will work. So that was kind of like
that's really true. Yes.
It's true, and that's I discovered that quite early, and I've seen people. I used to have. I can't name names. I had other friends that used to try and play riffs and stuff and using the white keys, and it just never really worked. And I think that's because they didn't know what they were doing.
So that must have been like an important discovery that you could play the black keys and you get this kind of
It was an amazing discovery, and that's kind of like. And I don't know if anyone knows someone called Andy Dalston from Digitonal. He's a friend of mine. He's a really cool guy, and a couple of years ago, I think it was 3 years ago now, I was asked to perform Electrosoma in a club in Camden, and I didn't obviously have any of the sequences or anything. I had nothing, no synths, no sequences, no arrangements, nothing. I will get to the point in a minute, bear with me. And I asked this guy Andy, who's my friend, to help reverse engineer some of Electrosoma. And one of the emails he sent me was, "Fucking hell, Steve, Black Notes." Yeah, and he said that was because he loves that album, and he said it was a major coup for him, major discovery.
Excellent. So at some point you and Mike are putting out some 12s. At some point you were called B12 as well, you know. Could ask why you called yourself B12, but you know, feel free to answer that. But like, how did the hookup with, let's talk about how did the hookup with like Warp happen? When did they give you a call and say we want to do something?
Okay, so me and Mike started B12 Records. Basically, we actually wrote some hardcore tunes as well under the name X-Ray Experiments. Not many people know that, but it's not something we're
I didn't know that. I only just found out about the Intramix.
Infmix, yeah. So we've done a couple of other quite dodgy things, and X-Ray Experiments was all about trying to generate money to buy some more equipment, you know, because it was really expensive back then, you know. Like, we used to have a JD800. I think it was about $2,000. You know, I was probably earning 50p a year or something, but you know, you needed money, so we did this thing called X-Ray Experiments to make some money. And when we had some money, we started B12 Records, which was kind of like what we loved, and we had a load of tracks, and we used to go and play. You used to know a guy called Lyndon C and Rob Atkinson. They had a record shop in Leabridge Road called Dance Factory, and we used to go down there and play some X-Ray Experiment stuff, and they loved it. And then, you know, we used to play some B12 stuff. Mike had a job at Music Power in Ilford, and we used to play it there, and they used to say, "Well, no, what the fuck is this?" You know, why would you even... Are we allowed to swear?
Of course you're allowed to swear.
Fucking cunty bollocks. Right, so they said, "Why the hell are you making this music?" And we were selling these like 5,000-6,000 copies of X-Ray Experiments, but we were like, "No, man, we want to do this B12 thing," and we did that, and I think we released something like 6 B12 records. And I used to have a fax machine. I was living in Croydon now. I moved out of East London. I was in Croydon. I used to have a fax machine behind the sofa. That was the business, a fax machine. And anyway, a fax came through, and it said on this fax, you know, there's a meeting in, I can't remember the name of the pub. It just said there's a meeting of electronic artists in some pub somewhere. You're invited. And you probably know this story because I relayed this story to someone else recently. And anyway, we went to this pub, and we went upstairs in this pub, and there was kind of lots of music people sitting around, and if I remember, there was like Cabaret Voltaire, a guy called Gerald, Alltech, Black Dog when they were together, and us, and we were just sitting there, and we thought, you know, what are we doing here? And then this guy sat next to us and said, "Are you B12?" I was like, "Yeah, we're B12." And he said, "I'm Rob from Warp," and that was it. And then I think the next day they offered us a 6-album contract, 6-album recording deal.
Holy shit, 6 albums?
Yeah.
That's astonishing. Wow.
6 album, it came from the fax machine, 6-album recording deal.
Are you sure it wasn't like a misprint, you know, those kind of dot matrix things?
Honestly, it was 6 albums, and you can tell you how much it was for. It's for £250,000, minimum advances across 6 albums, and then it had...
Wow.
It was £250,000 on minimum advances. I haven't got £250,000, by the way, so I didn't sign it. And on the maximum advances, it was a lot of money. And I remember saying to Mike, you know, like, this is nonsense. You know, we were selling 1,500 records off the back of a van, and you know, making £1,000. And I said, we're going to sign to this label, which we didn't know much about, to be honest. They were out of rhythm before, and Walk was like quite sort of new, obviously. And I said to Mike, you know, we'd be mad to sign this. We'd have to shut down our business, the fax machine, and and not be able to do anything. And so we didn't sign it.
So what did you do?
We sent. Oh my God! I can't believe I'm telling you these stories. We sent like, I'm from East London, and we have an expression called if someone if you're a knocker, you're stitching someone up, and we just sent Rob and Steve at Walper Fact saying, you're a couple of knockers from Sheffield, something like that. And but we were friendly, we got on all right, and we could get away with it. So they offered us a 1-album deal for Electrosoma, and gave us $3,500, I think it was, advance.
Okay.
What difference? And then when we did Time Tourist, are we allowed to talk about money?
I think it's too late now.
It's too late. Needless to say, I haven't made any money from music. And then we did Time Tourist. We did another 1-album deal, and then we said to come on, can we do another 6-album deal? But it just weren't happening. Now the other guys signed. Richard signed, and Black
Sure.
Dog signed, and Alltech signed, and they completed it.
Do you regret not signing it? Where do you think it would have put you if you had signed it?
Yeah, exactly. Did
Is
you
it-
regret doing
Are you allowed to ask questions?
that? This man asked exactly the right question.
Sorry.
Where do I think it would have been?
Yeah, or do you think it was the right or wrong thing to do? Where do you think you'd be now? And was it the right thing to do?
I think it was probably the wrong thing to do. The reason, Jamie, this is Jamie, by the way, he's my friend. The reason we didn't sign was because we didn't want to shut the label down. We didn't want to have our creativity stifled and be given direction and all that stuff. Had we have signed, I don't know. I don't know whether it was a mistake, to be honest, Jamie, because I don't know if we would have completed the 6 albums, because when we were talking about doing a 3rd album before Rob passed away, Walt was just telling us to change our sound, and we were saying, well, why would we change our sound? I remember saying, would you ask John Lee Hooker, he's a blues player, would you ask him to sing a punk song? You just wouldn't do it. And but Walt wanted us to change our style for our 3rd album, and that's kind of like why it never happened. So probably we would have been in a contract and never got out of it.
Did you get an impression of what they wanted you to do to, I don't know, juice it up, a bit more samples, a bit jungle, trip hop era stuff, I don't know,
Well,
What do you think the subtext was?
Oh, you're kind of on the money. I've got a torch in my pocket. Hang on, let me turn this off. So we did a thing for Warp called the Free EP, and I remember sitting with Rob, and he said, because I like jazz, I used to listen to a lot of jazz, like not 60s jazz, like 50s jazz, Dave Brubeck and Stan Getz and Jerry Mulligan and that kind of stuff, Thelonious Monk, Errol Garner, and he said, Steve, let's see some of your jazz influences coming into the music.
Wow, yeah.
So we did an EP called the Free EP, and the tracks were called Joe Morello, who's the drummer with Dave Brubeck Quartet. One was called Dave Brubeck, who's Dave Brubeck, and one was called Ron Carter, which was the bass player of Herbie Hancock, I think. We didn't like it, we weren't comfortable with it at all. So probably they would have wanted us to put more samples, more breaks, because Aphex Twin and Square Pusher were kind of doing their thing, and I to be honest, I'd had enough of music then, because I didn't understand it anymore. I'm going off on a tangent, but the last gigs that we done with Warp and Aphex Twin was playing, and I couldn't understand what was happening, and like me and Mike playing this sort of melodic, mid-paced techno, mid-paced dull electronica, whatever we want to call it, which was drummed into our head at the time, and then Aphex Twin was coming on, and and I couldn't understand. I thought, where's the melodies and the strings and stuff, and kind of got fed up with it. So, God, I do talk. Sorry.
No. That's all part of it. Like the album thing you mentioned is an interesting thing, because Warp were releasing a lot of albums and so on and so forth. But like B12 never really started as an album thing like initially. Like from my understanding, the group wasn't even called B12. The record label was called B12 to start with. So it was very much like 12-inch kind of business for the first 5, 6, 7 B12 releases. Like maybe it just felt better to keep putting out tracks rather than to try and force them into an album.
Well, definitely, like what I grew up on was EPs, shrink-wrapped EPs. Put them on your leg, open them up, great, £5 a time from the record shop, and that was what I understood of music, and albums were like the punk stuff that I listened to, you know, or the whatever. But kind of electronic music, the album thing didn't really happen. I think Warp kind of sort of started that with the artificial intelligence stuff. Did I answer you?
Well, I can go a bit deeper into that question by, you know, when Electrosoma came out, from my understanding, that was sort of put together in collaboration with Warp. You know, that was like some of your tracks which they sequenced. You know, we happy with that result.
I got you. Yeah, so like I think we had done 6 EPs at the time, and Rob from Warp loved them. You know, and we'd only sold, like I said, 2,000 records off the back of a van. A guy called Soul Trader used to drive up and down the country, and anyway, Rob said that, you know, I love these tracks, I want to put them on the album. So like tracks like Hall of Mirrors was by Musicology, and something else was by Red Cell, and something, you know, it was all different things. Anyway, this is how naive and stupid me and Mike were. You know, we said, yeah, let's do this album. Anyway, and we said, let's get the artwork done by the guy from 2000 AD, a guy called Percival, one of the artists. He did the artwork. Anyway, when the Electrosoma finished product came, and it said B12 Electrosoma, and like, I remember saying to Rob, like we were having some lunch, Rob, who are B12? Because B12 didn't exist, you know. B12 was a record label, and he said, oh, well, we didn't know what to put it as. And
why didn't they send you a fax?
why didn't you tell? Like, why didn't you ask us? You know, they didn't ask us. They just assumed that they could put B12, and that's where the name came. And I was really fed up and pissed off because I didn't want to be called B12. I didn't like it then. I don't particularly like it now, but.
You have got a tattoo of B12.
I do, yeah. Yeah, I've got B12 on my arm and on my finger, yeah. So it's kind of there for life, yeah.
Okay, cool. Which tracks from that kind of era, or any era really, do you have most emotional connection with?
I don't know. So I think oh God. So the two favourite tracks, like today, when you're asking me today off my head, one of them was called Paradroid. It was on B12 number 5, I think.
Named after the computer game, no?
It wasn't actually named after the computer game,
okay.
But yeah, there was I didn't know about the computer game. I think I kind of got the name from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think like Marvin the Paranoid Android. I think it came from there.
Mm.
And also another one that I loved was one called Soundtrack of a Stranger, and it had no beats or anything. It's just strings, and I remember it so well. It was such a good time in my life. And there was this guy. Do you remember Loot magazine? We used to buy Loot magazine. I think it used to come out twice a week. We used to scan, seeing what's for sale. And there used to be a guy called Dick Turpin. And what he used to do great imports. So he would drive over to wherever he went to and buy equipment and bring it back into the UK. And it's a bit of a dodgy thing. You shouldn't do this. And anyway, we bought this thing, a Roland JD800, which was a massive keyboard. And we plugged it in I had this flat in Croydon. And we plugged it in. And we sat on the floor. And me and Mike just, you know what I said about pressing as many keys as you can? I was at the top, Mike was at the bottom, and we just turned the DAT machine on. That was the track.
Wow, cool. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it just made there and then. It wasn't recorded or anything. It's just straight on the DAT. So there, those 2 tracks, I think.
Cool. There were some very mysterious messages in the run-out grooves of B12 records. Like at one point, some of them started getting bootleg. No, like years later, and you knew it was a bootleg, obviously, because you didn't do it, but also they didn't have the messages in the run-out groove. So this was like the message in a run-out groove of like B12 3 or 4 or something like that. The path narrows, we stay on it. The door closes, we can stop it. Where have all the people gone? Mm. Where did you get the idea for what you put on the run-out grooves?
Don't know. I don't know. Like the run-out grooves.
They're really mysterious.
They are mysterious. So in the old days with B12, we used to get the record cut at a place called JTS. I don't know if they're still going. And we used to take when you make a record, you get a thing called a lacquer, which is a really soft thing. And we used to take that back over to Mike's house where he lived with his mum and dad. And we used to put the lacquer on his kitchen work surface where his mum used to make the spaghetti bolognese. and we used to put a big angle poised lamp over the record. And my writing is crap. Mike's got really cool writing, and he had like a scribe, and he would scribe the lacquer, and we just used to think of these really cryptic things that they obviously come from what's on our mind at the time. You know, like that one you just said there. You know, I can't remember why we come up with it. It seems kind of sad, like the words.
No, it's got mystery. It's got like, you know, depth to it. It represents a state of mind which, you know, resonates with music.
Yeah, and it suits the music. And we've always done these scribes, and I've got another label now called FireScope Records. Little plug here, and I think I've done 15 releases now, and this year I've got so many releases, and the etchings are in there as well. Mike doesn't do them now because Mike lives in Dresden. I've got a guy called Sam who's my friend that does the cuts. He does it for me. I can't do it. My writing is illegible.
Okay. Tell us a bit about Time Traveller when you came to do like your second album. You know, that sort of got this sort of computer game kind of themed cover. Is that a concept which is running all the way through the record, or was, you know, what was the thinking behind that record?
So Electrosoma was basically a compilation, yes, so that's fine.
B12 compilation.
Yeah, and Time Tourist, like when we did the second album, we just, you know, they said, yeah, let's do another album, and we were playing a lot of computer games back then at this period of time. I can't remember what console it is, because we had every console you could think of, and I think it was, I can't remember whether it was a Mega Drive, a Super Famicom, or whatever, a Super Nintendo, whatever the UK version was called. And we were really into computer games, and always have been. I used to have a Spectrum when I was a kid. And we just come up with this idea to make it look like it's not a music product. You know, that was our idea, and the computer game was the natural way, natural thing that we thought of doing. So that's why it kind of looks like that. So and it was written as a kind of journey. Like I don't think there was any tracks rejected for Time Tourist. I think everything we did, they said yeah.
Okay.
So it was a concept album. I think it was a concept album. You know.
I suppose around this, or a couple of years later, you had people like, you had Richard James doing that with Mike Paradinas doing that knob twiddling album. That looked exactly like an MB Games kind of cover. So yeah, creative kind of fooling around with the cover of records around that time, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know, I've never heard that record, but I know the one. It's like a Downfall game, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think like
Had you sort of stopped listening to new stuff at that time?
Well, after Time Tourist, I'd had enough of listening to music. So, and it was only because I didn't understand it anymore. You know, I couldn't work it out anymore. I didn't want to be part of it because I can't make that kind of stuff, and there was no point in making what I made. So,
why such a strong reaction? Like, did it just seem like it was coming from a completely different place, or? I mean, also, have you gone back on? Have you changed your feeling about it a couple of decades later, or still the same?
Still the same.
Oh.
still the same. When I started,
too frantic, too
like for me, music.
Anarchic.
You know, like I'm not like I'm not a closed person. You know, like I told you, I listen to punk, reggae, jazz, electronic music, pop music. I listen to all sorts of things, but I just never understood Aphex Twin. I just don't. You know, the melodic stuff obviously is fantastic and beautiful, but the kind of glitchy, crazy stuff, I just didn't understand it, and I did. And the same with Alltech. If I've said it all right, I'm not into their stuff either. I did a gig with Alltech in Sheffield, and they, like I say, me and Mike played, and people were just like, yeah. And then when Alltech came on, it was just, people were just absolutely madding off and smashing the place up, and I just don't understand it. So I just said, well, I don't understand it. I'm not going to make it. I don't have a place here anymore. And that's only part of the story, to be honest. But you know, that was definitely big in my mind.
Okay. Takes all sorts. What's your favourite synth?
Hardware synth or software synth?
Either.
So it's the Roland JD800. We had two Roland J800s. They're just beasts. They're just amazing. And all of Electrosoma was Roland J800. Everything, the whole thing. You know, and even bled into Time Tourist. We had some other stuff. We had a Kurzweil K2000 and Access Virus, and I think it was called a Supernova, Kawaii K1, Juno 106s. But it was the Roland J800 was just the baby there.
So it wasn't all like analog synths, you had some digital synths as well.
Well, that's the funny thing, like we're digital, our music's all been written on digital equipment. I don't think, I've got some analog stuff now in the studio, but back then it was all digital, you know, and over my career, in quotes, people said, you know, I love your analog sound and the way you get that warmth, and I said, well, do you? I did, you know what, I did a gig in
That was going to be my next question.
was it?
No.
I did a gig a couple of years ago in Denmark. I think it was Copenhagen. I can't remember where it was. And this is when I came back to making music in about 2015. And everything that I wrote then was just VSTs. Everything, you know. And as I started getting some momentum up again, and I shared a stage with these guys that they had Moogs and all sorts of stuff up on the stage, and I had my little boutiques, my little setup here. And we were talking about an EP I'd done on a label called Detuned, and it was called Transient Life, and the guy was saying, you know, those analog synths and those analog pads are just, only you can do it that way. And I said, look, I've got to tell you something, you know, this is some VSTs. He weren't happy.
Yeah, I was sort of going to make the same mistake. There's something about, you know, indulge me for a second, there's something about B12, like, there's real economy to it, you know, like there's nothing there which seems extraneous, everything's quite considered, you know, really economical, really pared down, and it's easy to kind of listen to that and kind of think, oh, you know, there's like real purity in inverted commas in the equipment, but it's just not so.
Like I mentioned Kirk DiGiorgio before, you know, he's a good friend of mine. I've known him a long time, and I really respect what he has to say. And I never say anything good about myself, really. Anyone that knows me, I always play down everything about myself. And I sent him stuff. He was listening to it. He said to me, Steve, your production is amazing at what you do. And I said, you know, it kind of happens by luck. And he said, no, it doesn't happen by luck. You know what you're doing. And obviously for me to hear that, you know, I feel like being sick. That's horrible. I don't like it. And I will get to my point. So I've come to accept, and it's been hard. I've come to accept that I kind of do know what I'm doing, and so I don't think you could be using, you know, like a 10 grand Moog or a 50 pence plug-in, and if you kind of know what you're doing, it's going to sound good. And I accept that now.
Okay. Let's jump forward a little bit to last year, and you did the album Brain Fog, which came out on FireScope, which is as good an electronic record as you could measure up to anything else, I think. You know, that is a beautiful record with real depth and heart and soul, and you really poured a lot of your soul into it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I did. Oh shit. Yes. So from 2014 or 15, I think, I did 10 releases as B12, but it was me working by myself. Like my partner Mike stopped making music for a while, and so I kind of kept the flag going. And when Mike said he wanted to come back to do music, I still had a load of music that I'd written, and I didn't know what to do. I was kind of a bit confused. I was very confused about what I felt about music and my place and where I am, because I kind of like been running as a solo artist, but still under the name. And so brain fog. It's called brain fog, obviously. So I've got a foggy brain, and I put my heart and soul into that record. Yeah, and I didn't think at any point when I wrote that album, I've got to make something commercial in there. I've got to try and recoup some money. I've got, that was never there. It was just going to be 12 tracks, obviously for B12, of me, and it got some good reviews, and you gave it a lovely review. I was very touched. Yeah.
Did it come from a difficult place?
I have had some very difficult years. I've been very depressed for a long time, and I'm bouncing back a bit. It did come from a difficult place, and music's a big release for me. I can put everything I am into the music that I make, and brain fog, I definitely done that. And I was really nervous about releasing it, and I spoke to a lot of my friends and people, and I said, what if no one wants it? What if no one listens to it, or no one's interested? And they were, and it was really good.
And once, if you're in a difficult place and you channel as much of that as possible into a piece of music, do you then go back and listen to that piece of music and it feels better, or is that done? It's in the background. It's not done. I haven't listened to it in its entirety for quite a while. I must have received, 50, 60 emails, messages of people saying how much it resonated with them, and that meant more to me than anything. The interaction I have with people that listen to my music is really, really important to me. So it kind of lives on. I still get people write to me and say, I did a track called Sleep Gives Freedom, and for years all I ever wanted to do was go to sleep. I used to sleep all day, all through the day, till night time, and then I'd get up or something, and then I'd sleep again, just to get away from life. And I've had several people write to me about that track, so they really get it. And a friend of mine, a lady called Mel, lives in Spain. She did a video for it, and it's really quite apt. You should check it out on YouTube. It's an album of a lot of depth. I really recommend it.
Oh, thank you.
We've got about 10, 12 minutes left, and there's quite a lot of people, so it'd be nice to give people the opportunity to ask questions if you're okay with that, Steve.
Okay.
So, has anyone got any questions they want to ask of Steve? Sort of shout it out or something similar. Hello, on the front. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, first, I have some tracks which quite two-dimensional, and then how do you get to do third dimension, in a way, what makes loop in terms of transform to a song really? It's just modulation of the main themes, or really? So
sort of how do you make some two-dimensional?
Going from two, because all of us when we start music, we start as a loop, so it's sort of two-dimensional. So how we push really when we know to go to third dimension? So what steps do we?
How do you make it three-dimensional?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you very much. I hear a lot of demos. People send me a lot of demos, and if I have time to listen to them, I get so many I don't have time to listen to them, and I try and help people and give some advice. I honestly don't have a system, and I honestly still think I'm just lucky. I honestly just feel I'm lucky. But if I was to give you some tips, I would say use pan a lot, use auto pan a lot, use multi-delays a lot, and that's how you'll get depth. I don't know where you are with music, so forgive me if I'm, telling you stuff you already know. Lots. When you start out writing music, you write a bass line and you write a riff and you do a string, and kind of people stop there, So don't stop there. If you've got a bass line and it's a 1 to 5 loop, make it a 1 to 9 loop and stick a couple of high notes in there, and it just adds variation. And the more you can kind of do that, the more you keep the interest going. I don't know if I'm answering your question. You may.
No, you did.
Cool, thank you.
Cool.
Can I ask? You talked about
Go
some of
ahead.
your influence in the past, soundtracks. What influences you today, Because you said you stopped buying music a long time ago. What influences you today to still make music?
You know what, Jamie? This is Jamie again, everyone. You know, like, it's still the same. It's the same thing.
It's of the same block.
It's the same block. It hasn't changed. I don't listen to anything new. I haven't got. People say to me, you know, yeah, have you heard, you know, Billy Mack and Jay or whatever? I don't know, just making something up. I say, I haven't got a clue. Or if I go and do a gig or I go somewhere and they say, oh, you're playing this such a good lineup. I don't know anyone that's on the lineup. And I say to people, like I say to my son, I've got a son, I say, Harry, who are these people? And he say, yeah, Dad, he's big. And I'm like, really? I don't know. So it all still comes from the same place. But you kind of ask me, what, you know, like what you know, what excites me, and it's still the same stuff. And also I'm going to embarrass someone a little bit in the room, but this lady at the back there is called Bryony. She's a singer, and we're doing some stuff together, and we've got an album we're going to be releasing this year that really excites me. I've never worked with vocalists before, and it's like a whole new lease of life. Everything that I've done musically, fused with what Bryony does, is just brilliant. I love it. It's amazing. So that kind of, if you're talking about what excites me now,
That's exactly it.
you know, and I still write techno, Jamie. You know I do, and I still release records. I've got another album that's coming out this year. It's finished. I was going to try and release it last year, but I thought, you know what, step back a bit, Steve. And that's another album. It's like Rainfall Part 2, but it's a bit more up tempo now. It's a bit more in the light.
You got a name for it yet?
It's called Riddle Me Sane.
Riddle Me Sane?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I had to think of it. I was like, shut up. It's called Riddle Me Sane. The artwork's done. It's like a maze, and it's someone sitting next to a maze. But it's called Riddle Me Sane. I don't know. Maybe I feel I'm getting a bit saner these days.
Cool. Any more questions for Steve? This guy with the green top and a hat. Shout it out.
Yeah, I just want to know, with regards to your production process, do you mix a lot of your tracks yourself as you go along, or do you outsource to like mix engineers?
Who mixes your tracks?
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mix all my tracks. I mix myself. Obviously I get them mastered at the end, but the mix is just all me. It's all done in Ableton. Everything's done in Ableton. Some people I know, they kind of create in Ableton and export to WAV files and kind of mix it in Logic. But all my projects are live. Every project you open it up, the plugins are there. You know, if I've had to sample an external synth that I have, but I mix everything myself. Yeah, everything.
Is that a process that you kind of learn and built on as you produce further down the line, or?
Do you know what? Again, I've said it before. I think it's luck. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. I just do it, and it just seems to. People tell me it works, and I always think when I play my stuff next to other people's productions, I always think, you know, it kind of sounds a bit thin and a bit wishy-washy and hasn't got much
Your
impact.
one sounds thin. Do you think? Your one or their one?
Mine.
Yeah. Okay.
Mine.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, I always think my production sounds lame compared to everyone else's, and but I get told, you know, Steve, this isn't the case.
Always feels different when you're the actual one who's actually made it, and you can see all the joins. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a really sage comment by Kirk DiGiorgio, that even if you don't know what you're doing, the evidence suggests that you do know what you're doing. Whatever that is, there is something you're doing. Oh, that's interesting.
Good question.
In the black.
I'm always interested to know kind of what people's studio setup is and when they produce and how frequently, and if there's anything, if there's like a habit or routine, or if it's like an emotional thing. I'm just interested to know what yours is.
Like the process to write something.
What you do.
Or how often.
How often, if you have a room, you know, if you go elsewhere, or you have a setup, or you work at night or in the day.
Yeah, where does it fit into your life, making music?
So I got a studio at home. When me and Mike in the old days, we had a studio together, and then we had one in our own places. And I don't like, because I don't think I'm musical, and I don't think I've got much to give. I can't work in the same room as somebody, so I don't do that. I don't go and work with anybody else because I'd just close up and wouldn't be able to do anything. You know, I've gone through phases of working all through the night, you know, like from sort of 10 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning. And everything that I write is in headphones, everything. I've got some wicked speakers in the studio, but I like the intimacy of headphones. This chap here was asking about making three-dimensional. Maybe it's because I work in an enclosed space, and a lot of producers can't work in headphones. Like Kirk, again, he can't do that, you know. But when I sit down,
Sorry to interrupt. What headphones and what monitors do you have? And what
So
headphones?
I've got 3 sets of monitors. I've got some Adam, you know, the horizontal Adams, A77X. I think I've got a set of them, and I've got 2 sets of KRK Rockets, Rocket 6 and Rocket 5. But the Adams are just wicked, way much better. Headphones, you know, like I collect a lot of stuff. I think I've got something like 12 pairs of sets of headphones.
So do you use them for mixing?
Writing and mixing, yeah, always, yeah.
The comparison across the headphone set is like what you reference the mix with.
All my reference comes from some headphones called Ultrasone Signature Pros. Everything, that's everything comes from those headphones. Yeah, but when I write, I never have a plan, or I never sit down and think, you know, I'm going to write something. It just, however I feel.
Time for one more short question if you want to throw it at Steve. Oh, yeah, sorry, a guy right at the back who's looking at... Oh, there's a guy right at the back. Stick your hand up really high. So that guy there. Yeah, shout out.
Question about the artwork for FireScope. FireScope art is beautiful. What's the inspiration for it?
Wicked question, thank you. FireScope, when I started FireScope Records, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do something. Well, maybe it's a bit naff to say I wanted to do something different. That's not the right thing. I wanted to make something which was visually as beautiful as what you're going to list was on what you're going to hear. And so I found a few artists, like Jace has done some stuff for me, my friend Sarah does my tattoos, and I give the artist free reign to do what they want, and I give them the music and I say, this is what the EP's called, and kind of this is what it's about, you know, and go for it. So, and I'll keep doing that, you know, it costs a lot of money, and but it's not about the money, no, I'll just keep doing that.
But they're objects of art, then. That's how they look. You know?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like to think they are as well. Like this year, I've probably got enough releases to do a release every month once I finally get my head back in the right space, and probably half the artwork's already finished, and they're just all amazing and stunning.
Okay, cool. Let's. I want to give Steve like a few minutes to relax before he plays. He's going to play some music shortly, which should be great. The Wire magazine is doing events all throughout the week. We've got Shabaka Hutchings tomorrow lunchtime, and numerous other things coming up. Bleepex continues till February, something like that, mid-February? February 3rd, says Raj at the front. So many more things going on here. Join me in saying many thanks to Steve for talking.
Can I just say, like, honestly, I really appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. Honestly, you don't know how much it means to me. Thank you.
Can I just say a really boring thing? Can everyone who's sitting down